Welcome to EVE Online, I'm Major Freak. This is going to be about strategy for owners of, or users of Upwells, basically. Specifically owners, of course. So I've got 5 local Aster houses, all with cloning service, really cheap, like dirt cheap. And I love using them because I go in there and I switch out a current implant set for another, and then an hour later I can switch back without, having to wait for the typical 19 or 20, 24 hour cooldown that you get with clone jumping. So that's a great thing, and it helped me learn division of labor. I used to have all my ships in one spot, and I'd be like, "What is this ship for? Is it an armor tank? Is it a shield tank? What's its role?" And it was always so confusing, and I had different faction ships with each character, and it was all a mishmash. And I'm like, "What?" And I ended up just not flying them because I didn't know what they were for anymore. And having these Aster houses for over a year now, maybe 2, was just a wonderful experience in teaching me to separate them. Like, you've got an implant set to use shields that are active, put all the active shield boosting ships in one station. And I'm like, oh, this is awesome. So I spent all this time like shoving all my stuff into Aster houses. Well, back in the day when you could refit there were no cores back then, so you could totally refit willy-nilly and stuff like that at any Upwell. So I had shoved all my assets into that because it was, where am I could put this? Is this a ECM boat? Is it a small ship I want to hide from being targeted? Is it a plated armor? Is it? I've only got one passive shield tank implant set on one client, but yeah, I hardly do that. Not really into Kaldari, but yeah, I've got like active armor tanking, active shield tanking, passive armor. I've got speed. I've got one client with one character who's a prober. Yeah, a whole bunch of stuff, and I ended up shoving all the proper ships into the proper places. And I'm like, wow, this is really awesome. And I started to get a feel and started to use a lot more ships that way, and a lot more types of fits. And I started to use my implants a bit more because I could just swap them out and swap back without worrying about the cooldown and going back to, what I love doing, mining. I love that stuff. Unfortunately, I I knew it was going to happen, and I knew I would have to safe up my ships and assets, but I didn't know how much god awful time it would take. We got war decked by a serious entity, Domain Research and Mining, or Mining and Research, or whatever. And they're big. They pretty much own Masaba area, right? That's where the cheap stuff is, and so derp. I bought something in Masaba, so they were around blopsing in the area with bombers, and they got their bombers spanked by an entity in lowsec, and within 24 hours they'd war decked us, just because I'm sure the boss wanted to, change contact. We got spanked. Let's focus on something else, not our losses. And so they war decked us, later claiming it was a contract. Oh god. Yeah, the ubiquitous, literally ubiquitous excuse. Yeah, so they randomly targeted us. We were in the neighborhood. We were vulnerable. We had way, way too many upwells. It was just, I'm sure the grass is greener, right? So, unfortunately, what happened was I spent at 2 weeks, literally 2 weeks, just moving all my stuff to safety, and I was like, never again. So I attempted to keep most of my stuff in NPC stations, and what I did, most of my upwells were 1,000 kilometers from a station, and what I did was I moved all that stuff and the clone to that NPC station, and I did that for all my upwells. And it was okay. This is good. I can actually. I've still got division of labor. This is great. I've not. I've just jumbled. I haven't confused myself by jumbling them together again. I've got the implants in that NPC station. I've also got that same ship stuff in the same station. This is perfect. And after the war, it was like, okay, we'll start moving stuff back. And that's what I did. And we just recently had a war with an entity we could have taken on quite easily. It was probably a match for us. Probably, well, definitely more experience. They have, but we had the motivation to, you know, get out there and do it. That's how you get experience. But I was like, wait, okay, so I've got certain ships out in Upwells that I only use during war. Why do I need that? If I'm going to war, why do I need to save them? Why don't I just, since we hardly go to war, why don't I just keep them, the ones I use for war, in NPC stations? Because instead of having to put things into safety, I can take them out of safety, and it feels a lot cooler to go, okay, we're mobilizing, I'm going to start moving stuff I want into Upwells. That feels a lot more fun than feeling like I'm in siege mode, and it gets me into this mood of aggressive kind of, it feels good to, like, okay, you're war decking, that's great, I'll move stuff into my Upwells, which is kind of cool. So that's what I started to do, and now I've moved pretty much everything into NPC, even stuff I use for war, because on a war footing, I'll start moving stuff I need to selectively when I need it for the war into Upwells, so I can switch out easy. And that's what I've been doing over the last 3 weeks. As you can see, I think I've got my ice mining down in one, and then I have another. So I've got two. I've got same thing, two. I've got two, and this one has two, and this one has three, actually, the prober. I love probing, so yeah, I use the prober a lot too. So I've got three, and I've got, this is my hauler, one, yeah, that's it. So if I get war decked, that means I have two. So instant the war deck comes in, I move, the ice miner, because I'm not going to be ice mining, move the ice miner into safety and the assets for that. And I've already got the NPC station earmarked, of course. So that's easy enough. So boom, that's done within 24 hours. That's cooled down. Just before the war starts, I can get my other into safety, because I won't be missioning. I won't be doing fobs, so I'll just move everything else in. And after that, after the war starts, I'm in my main implant. Everything's safe already. It's all done. I can start being aggressive, harassing, scouting, taking advantage of people who are straggling, seeing if I can set up an ambush and get others in to ambush the roamers. Last time we had Domain, they were going on roams with small gangs to see if they can get content. Good fights, right? More like ambush people. But yeah, hunt the hunters. And that's what I do best. Counterintelligence I love to do. But I was I was just so busy moving assets during that war that I wasn't able to do as many locate agents as I wanted to. I wasn't able to really think about the enemy. And if I'd had the time, instead of spending all that time, I might have realized that they were way more multi-boxers in that corp, the dedicated ones smashing fobs, than I realized. It took me a while. But once I'd safed everything, I had that time. And so you need that time to know your enemy, because otherwise you're just running around your head cut off. So yeah, it's now fine tuned, and I really like the way I've got it. I really counsel anybody with clone services not to put their stuff into it's seductive. Don't, just don't. You won't be able to. It'll slow you down in reaction time when you need it the most. If you're going to defend. If you're not, well, I'm sure you'll spend your time shuffling assets. But other than that, if you want to actually make a stand, and because if domain goes against its word, dog meat, but you learn so much, and you can apply that in the future to other entities that you can match. We're outmatched, of course. If they ever go against its gain, we have this like Upwell. It's a bit of a dirt move by somebody, but yeah, it's yeah. As long as you don't make yourself a bling target, you're not going to be the lowest hanging fruit, and that's the whole point. I don't have bling stuff on my Astro houses. They're fit well. They're fit smart. They're fit dangerously. All of them now. That last war shook the dust off me, realizing I needed to get two of my Upwells up to snuff for rigs. I'd hesitated to put rigs in them that were proper, so I swapped out for two targeting rigs. So allows me to. They had Kikimoras, and if I'd had, they didn't attack my Shuria Astro House, and I'm like, I wonder why. I'm pretty sure it's because they had that targeting rig. It doubles your targeting time. I mean, that halves your targeting time, and they were warping off their frigate logi and coming back with them on grid to break the ECM I'd put on them. And if I could have targeted them twice as fast, yeah, that would have been a problem for them. At least, let's put it this way: I was putting pressure on people who, if they were having to do things to deal with one person going against how many players they had. We know one player was a multi-boxer, but the others not so sure, right? So yeah, it was entirely possible that if we put any more pressure on them, they just give up and go away. They just went to. I saw them go to Jita and buy the Kikimoras and then head off. It was pretty. It's interesting. But yeah, I so recommend you move. Like, how many assets do I have? Like, see, 1, 2, 3, 4 items, right? That's easy to move. Like, stupidly easy to move. See, I've got one item, right? 6 items, 2 items, 2 items. It's crazy how little assets I have. I really don't do a lot of varied stuff, so I really don't need. Yeah, I mean, 2 out of 5 no, that's at Teriba. So 6 items at Warhammer. Yeah, it's basically that. Yeah, I mean, it's so little assets. This guy's got a metal scrap in pretty much every up all around. Just keep an eye on things. Yeah, 19 items, probably. Why do I have that? Is there a ship I was gonna? How bizarre. Anyway, sorry. And this is my hauler. Sure, yeah. See, it's all safed up. It's already safed up. So the instant we ever go to war with a worrisome entity, I can put all my thinking into how do I counter this? How do I help my guys in PvP instead of just going, oh my god, I gotta move stuff. So yeah, that's something you might not be thinking of when you're, or you might have thought of it, but you haven't grasped the entire how much time it takes, especially if you've got lots of implants in Upwells, in the vulnerable Upwells. So yeah, it takes an extreme amount of time to do all this safing up, and it sadly has to be done, and it sadly takes your time away from contributing to the defense effort, or just harassment effort if they're a major entity, you know. But anyways, yeah, I thought I'd get that little pep talk over with. I just thought of it recently. It was like, you know, I'm doing this, I better make a video, and now that I'm pretty much complete, happily so, especially with somebody from Domain sniffing around, I don't think it's serious. I think it's somebody who resubbed and was in the area at the time they'd unsubbed and is just getting back in the game. But you never know, right? Especially since we have a vulnerable structure nearby. I roll my eyes about that one. Anyways, thanks.